welcome to episode 3 of Behind the Hunt, our new series, an extension of North American Whitetail TV. We're very excited to come to you today. We have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about our third episode of NAW TV here in Q1 2021, believe it or not. I've got with me Haynes Shelton. As always, Haynes, how are you doing, sir?
Layden, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me again. We're excited to talk about another really cool episode of NAW TV this week, and we have another special guest, man. I'm going to let you do the honors of introducing him.
That's right. Our special guest today is a guy that Haynes and I have got to know very well. I've actually known this gentleman for, probably going on 15 plus years at this point in time. Back to my competitive shooting days before I got into the rest of the industry. And that individual is Mr. Todd Snader, the manager of brand marketing for several of the pure archery groups, but specifically today, we're going to be talking about Bowtech Archery. Todd, welcome.
Oh, thanks, guys. I'm excited to be part of this this new venture for you guys, and especially, the first 3. I'm ready. This is great.
Well, we're excited to have you, man. And you guys have had a lot of news in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about that here today on Behind the Hunt. And we've been a part of some of that, and we're going to be a part of some more of it in the next couple of weeks. So everybody, make sure you stay tuned to some of our announcements coming down the pipe with the folks over at the Pure Archery Group. We're pretty excited about it, to say the least. Wouldn't you agree, Haynes?
Absolutely, man. I tell you, I was just shooting my Solution SS today, man. I took a little break over lunch and had to fling a few arrows. I'm getting kind of addicted to that bow, man. It's super sweet. I've got it all tuned up, and it's a sweetheart, man. Really a great bow, but there's more stuff coming. A lot of great new surprises in the works. So we can't wait to share the news.
Well, I think addicted to it is a bit of an understatement, because I was on my way home from South Texas last night, and you called me after hours and said, man, I have been outside shooting this SS, and I can't tell you how much I love it. And I always get giddy when I have buddies or friends or family members that call me and they start talking about how much they love a bow, because I'm a little bit of a bow geek. Todd can attest to the fact that I've broken a few over the years when I start to fiddle with them a little too much. But nothing more exciting, in my opinion, when we start talking about bows, and specifically bow hunting bows that are going to help us be successful in the field. So, well, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And Todd has a lot of good information for us that we're looking to share with the folks today, and that is directly surrounding Bowtech's strategy and coming to market, how they're designing their bows, and some of the features and benefits that are coming with those bows, and how they pertain to the whitetail hunter specifically. So I'm looking forward to getting to that part of the episode. But first, I want to tell everybody that today's episode is brought to us by Bowtech Archery. We're very excited to have them as a partner at North American Whitetail TV. We're going on our 2nd year. The relationship continues to grow. If you haven't checked out Bowtech Archery's products, go over to bowtecharchery.com, hop on their social pages. They're very active and engaged on Facebook and Instagram. And Todd, I apologize, are you guys active on Twitter?
We are. Even more so now, we're spinning that up. You even see a little TikTok going.
Oh, man. Haynes, you're in luck, buddy.
Oh, I haven't ventured into the TikTok realm yet, but maybe one of these days. We need to get NAW in as many places as we can, brother.
That's right. And I'll tell you, Todd, if you're looking for a subject for your next TikTok video, Haynes might just lend himself for that.
I heard he's a pretty good dancer, so we may need to take him up on that.
Especially when he kills big deer. He likes to dance right afterwards. I'm hoping that we catch it on camera one of these days. But
apparently I have been featured on TikTok before, and I didn't even realize it was happening. A buddy of mine sent me a video, and it was a nice velvet buck that I shot in Wyoming a couple years ago. And I kind of lost it in the tree stand and was cutting up a little bit, and my eyes got as big as pool balls, man, and I had no idea I was even there, but apparently I was viral on TikTok for losing my cool in the tree stand.
That's great. I might join TikTok just to see that.
Check it out. It might still be there.
Well, good. Well, again, it's brought to you today by the folks at Bowtech Archery, our partners there. Thanks, Todd. And go check them out, bowtecharchery.com, their Facebook page, their Instagram page, their Twitter page if you're a tweeter. And Go figure out what's new and the latest and greatest. Make sure you're following along there. Great partners of ours, and we're so excited and thankful to be using their products in the field. So let's dive right into the episode, guys. This week, we are actually going back a week. So everybody turn on your DVRs or pay attention 6 weeks from now when we re-air this episode. And we're going to be talking about an episode called Stan Strikes Again, which is a familiar phrase for us here at NAW, Haynes, because Stan always seems to get it done. And that's exactly what he did in this episode. He was filling his second tag last fall in the state of Illinois. And he'd already filled his first tag with a crossbow and was coming into this one with a vertical bow and was just jacked about it. We had videographer Brad Biddle with him, if I remember correctly. And the guys just had a great hunt. But the whole strategy was based around hunting food sources. And not just hunting food sources on the food sources, but hunting in between food sources and bedding areas, really capitalizing on travel corridors. So great episode. I know that you watched it and we both got a kick out of it. Stan's an ace with his bow, always has been. And he's shown that again this year with his Revolt.
Yeah, man. I tell you, Stan Potts, we just got to keep in mind, that he's been killing big mature whitetails with a bow and arrow since before I was even alive. So he's a total veteran. He's one of the best in the industry, and he has left his mark on the whitetail world. And we're so fortunate to still have him here smoking big deer on camera for NAW TV. And you're right, this was yet another great hunt in Illinois, his home state. And he's killed a lot of great deer in Illinois, and if there's a dude who knows how to get after them in the pre-rut and the rut and figure out those kind of hard to pattern big mature bucks, he's the man to do it. And in this episode, it kind of is that classic cat and mouse game where, there's such a you always want to hunt a food source when it's hot, man. And like there's a big draw to a really good looking food source and you think, man, that's the place to be. But, with the big old bucks, these mature deer, sometimes they're not getting to those food sources in legal shooting light or just not, they're not hitting it like the majority of the deer herd, your does and your immature bucks. They're smarter. They get to those places a little bit later. And so Stan's strategy really deals with trying to intercept those bucks coming off of bedding before they make it to the food source. He knows where they were and he knew where they were going. He tried to get in between.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's so like, I like that you talked about the fact of it's so attractive for us as bow hunters to go set up nice and easy on that entry point in a food source. And
right.
So many times we don't see that big mature deer until right at last light. And, it's arguable that the majority of the time you won't see them until last light. So you kind of get in the game, get a little further down the travel corridor and try to get to them earlier in daylight. So great episode. You see it displayed. We've seen Stan do it time and time and time again, and he did it again right here on this week's episode. So, Todd, I know you live in Oregon now, where the Bowtech office is there just outside of Eugene or right on the outskirts of Eugene, but you're originally a Midwestern boy as well. So you've had a little experience hunting whitetails with the bow and arrow that time of year in one of the greatest states, arguably, in the country.
Oh yeah, I'm a Ohio boy. Been here now for 17 years, so I guess they consider me from Oregon. But I've always got that the soft spot. My go-to is always whitetail. Everybody asks me, I've got elk out here. I've got every animal imaginable. Mm-hmm. But I always tell everybody, well, I want to go kill a big whitetail because that's what I pretty much grew up on hunting. Elk is great, but it's just to your point, what you guys are talking about, it's just something about a big mature whitetail buck that get your blood pumping, but you're a whitetail, big mature whitetail, but you get an elk in your face bugling too is pretty cool. So.
I've experienced that a time or two, and I might have peed down my leg when that happened, but you're right. The big mature whitetail, man, just gets you fired up. And I think it has a lot to do with the season, which we saw here in this episode too. You've got the colors of the foliage all around you in those Midwestern timbers. You've got dry corn out in the field or maybe cut corn stock fields. And and beans, and the beans are probably already cut in most instances, but there's a whole scenery there that plays out. And, you know, that's one of the things we try to do at NAWTV is really share that adventure with folks. So that, you know, like yourself, when you see that scene played out in video form, you feel your soul warm up and say, hey, I want to get there. I want to get back there in your case, you know, and get back to my roots and hunt those whitetails and chase them in the Midwestern, you know, ecosystem. So, great
you know,
episode.
I was out in Missouri a few weeks ago, and as soon as I hit the stand the first day, I'm like, yeah, this is where to be. Right?
Well, I hate to hear that it didn't work out for you in Missouri, but I'm glad you got back this way. Next year,
I'll get back there sooner than later. So,
well, the invite's always open at my place, so come on back anytime. We'll work that out. But, well, I'll carry on about the episode. Haynes, the segment of From the Stand this week was on travel corridors, exactly that. And Stan kind of breaks down his tactics and talks about, you know, the importance of knowing what a pinch is and a bottleneck and a funnel and a saddle. And, you know, it's great terminology to kind of get, I would say, the hunter's definition of, because, you know, we write about it in the magazine quite often, and we're not the only ones. If you're reading edit anywhere about whitetail deer hunting, you're more than likely, especially during the rut, going to hear about pinches, bottlenecks, funnels, and saddles. You know, you're going to hear about it. But I think it's just good to get that real world application that Stan lays out for folks, and talks about a couple of things that, you know, I'll tell you, one of the things that stuck out to me was him talking about a deer using the more secure areas or forms of those type of landscapes to get from food to bed or bed to bed as they're checking for a hot doe.
Yeah.
So why don't you elaborate just a little bit on that for our folks?
Well, you know, these are classic, timeless, never going to go out of style whitetail tactics, you know. And when we're talking about hunting deer in the woods, you know, it's a challenge. No matter where you are in the country, you get back in that timber, things get thick and nasty. And in a lot of places, the terrain looks very similar. And if you're inexperienced in hunting deer in the woods, man, it can be a really daunting task to figure out where the deer live and how they travel. So woodsman skill and knowledge of how deer use the terrain that's how you kill them. And that's how you really become lethal hunting in the woods. So when you're talking about pinches, you know, imagine exactly that. Imagine taking the landscape and compressing it down into some kind of a funnel, whether it's natural barriers like blown down trees or slopes that converge, or waterways that arrowhead. I tell you, I love an arrowhead where two waterways come together and just force deer to go through that spot, that little piece of, you know, of high ground in between waters or blown down trees or any kind of obstruction. Or if you're talking man-made, you know, we're looking at fence gaps, we're looking at actual fences, we're looking at roadways, we're looking at pieces of agriculture, we're looking at piled up logs from guys who came in with a dozer making clearing fields, windbreaks, things like that. There's no shortage of pinches and natural funnels that exist. You just got to go out there and try and find them.
That's right.
And a saddle, same thing. I mean, imagine taking a horse saddle and laying it down. You know, find the place in the woods where that saddle would fit. Obviously, you've got a big hilltop that's going to slope off on the two sides, and the deer, you know, they're always going to run the path of least resistance. So think about when you're in the woods, if I was trying to survive eating acorns and twigs and mushrooms and it's freezing cold, and I have to conserve as much energy as physically possible, where would I walk? What's the easiest route? How would I get from point A to point B? And in the rut, like you mentioned, all of this can go straight out the window, because as soon as a big buck gets on a hot doe, he's going wherever she goes. So all you can do as an educated deer hunter trying to kill one back in the sticks, you got to read sign, you got to scout, you got to get out there, figure out what the deer are doing. You look for scrapes, look for rubs, tracks, trails, and then just sit back, take a deep breath, analyze the terrain, and just think logically about where deer should be moving, and then put yourself right in the middle and get ready to shoot one.
Right, exactly. And you'll see like this week's episode, and the reason why we invited Todd on is the fact that, you know, we're talking about doing this with a bow, not a rifle that can shoot 250 yards. We're talking about bringing this down to, you know, ideally 30 yards or less.
Yeah.
And in some occasions it grows to 40, 45, 50, but you know, we're doing our best to keep this 30 yards and under, which is where the majority of whitetail bow hunting harvest shots take place. So, you know, that's the continuity I think you'll see. We haven't really addressed it yet, but that's continuity that you're going to continue to see throughout this episode as you watch it on Sportsman's channel or Outdoor channel here this spring. You're going to see that this all applies to bow hunting knowledge, and this all applies to the things that folks at Bowtech are doing to better that weapon for that application. Because you're going to be in some sticky predicaments like you're talking about in a saddle. Sometimes you're on a hillside. Sometimes you're in a ground blind. You know, sometimes that setup requires the right elements into a bow. And that's why I'm looking forward. I don't want to rush through our episode, but I'm looking forward to having Todd talk a little bit more about some of the things that they're doing with these bows, and that, just like you said, you're experiencing with those. So Todd, if you were to think back to your, you know, most recent whitetail hunt, what would be in your minds your ideal position in such a situation? You know, middle of the rut, you're looking to hunt a travel corridor. What's kind of your favorite area? Are you looking for a bottleneck? Are you looking for a pinch point or a saddle? What do you like to focus on?
Yeah, I always personally, I'm looking at bottlenecks. You know, being from Ohio, a lot of farm country there too. We got a lot of good food sources being in Ohio. So those are the big areas I focused on. Ohio is a big public land area, so you got to know a lot of farmers, things like that, to get good access to private land. But those are the main areas I really focus on personally. We're just those travel quarter pinch points there, where they're always going to go to try to get to that food source to bedding.
That's right. Well, cool. Well, the next segment in the episode is going to be Dr. Deer. And I personally think that this is probably one of the neatest Dr. Deers that we do through this season. And it is olfactory glands. It's, you know, we're doing this breakdown episode to episode of a deer's anatomy, and what facts can help a deer hunter better understand their anatomy and their essentials, I guess you would say, for living. And we all know that, man, a deer's nose, in most cases, is its best sense. And they lean on it so hard. And we've got one of the best people in the country that can explain that to us from a biological standpoint. And that's Dr. James Kroll. And I would tell you that what really put this little segment into perspective for me, or just the discussion of the olfactory system of whitetails into perspective for me, was the discussion and diagram that we placed within the segment where Doc discusses the amount of olfactory receptors that whitetails have. And Haynes, I'll let you kind of lay the facts out as our resident expert.
Man, I tell you, I love this Dr. Deer series. James has really, he's examined week by week all of the whitetails' defenses. So he's gone through eyesight, sense of smell, and their hearing. And, you know, this week, obviously, we're talking about the olfactory system and how great whitetails can smell. And, you know, at brass tacks, you got to remember, a whitetail deer, a wild free-range whitetail deer, something is trying to kill it and eat it 365 days a year. They live in the wild, and that's Mother Nature, and that's called the food chain. So these deer are always at risk of being taken down. And so their main defense mechanism, a deer lives by their nose. And in this segment, Dr. Kroll is talking about olfactory receptors, which basically are these receptors that detect certain odors and molecules in the air. And, you know, he says a whitetail has over 200 million of those. And, you know, we know dogs smell extremely well. And compared to a whitetail, even a dog has 150 million. So a whitetail has more. And then if you want to compare that to like our sense of smell as humans, we have 5 million of those olfactory receptors. So literally no comparison in how a whitetail detects odor versus how we do. So, you know, a difference that is that drastic, it's hard for us to even wrap our mind around. how effective that defense mechanism is for a deer. And it makes you think, man, there's no way I can ever beat a whitetail's nose. And I tell you, it's really hard, but the only way to do it is to put all the odds in your favor. And Dr. Kroll talks about that. He talks about how critically important it is to play the wind, hunt with the wind in your favor, use scent control strenuously, use your Ozonics unit. Ozone, we know, literally deletes human odor and bacteria molecules from the air. The ozone molecules attack them and get rid of them. And those are the sorts of things that are totally critical and mandatory for the modern deer hunter to do to get away and have a presence in the woods and kill a deer, especially in bow range. It's one of the hardest things we'll ever do because they're so, well adept at picking us out with their nose.
Yep, for sure. And we get to talking about, especially where Todd's from. And, you've hunted Southern Ohio. I've hunted Southern Ohio. I'll take that back. I've hunted West Central Ohio. I've not hunted Southern Ohio. I've not got down into the hills, but I've filmed there with you, some of our opens and closes, and experienced the terrain there in Southern Ohio. And you get into some of those areas where you're hunting those saddles or pinch points or bottlenecks, and you've got the topography factor that happens. So let's say you put yourself halfway up a ridge or down a ridge to hunt that hogback, as Stan refers to it in the episode there from the stand, and you're going to start to deal with things like thermals.
Oh yeah.
As the sun comes up, the thermals are going to change because you have that topography, and those thermals are going to turn, and they're probably going to lean more upward. Sun goes down, and those thermals are going to turn. They're going to lean more downward, even though you might have a wind direction that interferes with those thermals. There's going to be some influence there. So as you said, when we're bow hunting, we've got to pay good attention to what's going on. We're not going to beat a deer's nose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put Todd on the spot again. I'm going to say, Todd, we all have that moment as whitetail hunters where we have lost a big buck or a special buck or an opportunity at that deer due to getting winded. Do you have one that you remember that sticks out in particular?
Yeah, I was just thinking about as you're telling the story. I'm going to throw to Haynes what Haynes said, Ozonics. Yep. I swear by those Ozonics now. Yeah. I absolutely love it. Even elk hunting, those have changed the game for me here in Oregon, the Ozonics, but I'll give them a little plug because I love those things as well. So. I was actually in Illinois a couple years ago when we debuted our Bowtech Realm.
Okay.
And I had a camera guy with me that was not a hunter. But it was an older buck came by. We weren't going to shoot him, but I saw him circling on us and knew right where the wind was at. And I told this cameraman, showed him right where he's going to stop. I said, that buck will stop right there and do a U-turn. He's like, how do you know? I said, because that's where our wind is. So he's watching. And that buck put on the e-brake as soon as he hit that spot and just stopped dead in his tracks. And it was crazy because I knew the wind. We had watched the wind all day. I was keeping track of it. And he was astonished that I knew where that deer was going to stop. I said, because they smell so good, you can't win that game. Now, that was pre-Ozonics. That was several years ago. I hadn't been turned on to Ozonics, but I've won the win game a little bit with Ozonics before too, but yet to take an effect. But that it is crazy how much, and he didn't bolt on me, but he knew something was going on to the point where he didn't keep walking.
He knew it was up. And we've all had that light bulb moment that sticks out. That's why I wanted to ask. And we've probably lost a couple big deer in some cases to it, but we have definitely lessened the margin for error, I guess you could say, in employing Ozonics. And it's great to hear you say that too, because, some folks will say, oh, well, you're partnered with Ozonics at NAWTV, but
no, not me. Yep,
you're not. And it's good to have that third party endorsement. And a lot of folks that we talk with that have had that experience will say that. And it's nice to hear that. And we work with a lot of different great products on the show, and just even in our editorial opportunities. But I can tell you that Haynes and I, and you too, by what I'm hearing you say, would probably say there's two important things that go out the door with us. One, our bow, one, our Ozonics. And if we don't go to the stand with one of the other, we're going to feel naked. And that is definitely, it's reached that status with us. So.
And I also had that when I went to Missouri a few weeks ago. I had that tank I showed you.
Yep.
That day, that wind was marginal, but it was my last ditch day. And I think he still got a wind. He hung up, and I still think he winded me a little bit. It was enough. I think it was swirling his direction.
Yep.
That, I think, honestly, that is the most gut wrenching missed opportunity I had because of that tank. And you saw him. I sent you a photo of him right after he left. So
I was definitely going to be envious if you put an arrow
Yeah.
through that deer. I was going to be happy for you, but the
Yeah.
fact that you came to my home state and shot a deer that big, I was going to be a little envious.
I just got nauseated thinking about that buck walking.
That's usually how it goes when we think back to getting winded. So,
Yep.
well, the last segment of our episode this week, guys, is Big Buck Factory. It's, you know, arguably our most popular segment at NAW TV. And Gordon worked with Keith Snyder there at the Big Buck Rendezvous, again, in your home country in Ohio, Todd. And Haynes, you were actually there with Gordon filming this segment. What town were you guys in?
So we were in Marietta, Ohio. That was the first annual Whitetail Rendezvous. There, an awesome public event where some of the biggest whitetails in history were on display for anybody to come and check them out. And it was really a neat hands-on venue where the public got a little closer look at some of these giant deer than ever before, and got to hold them in their hand and see them up close and personal instead of behind a rope or a gate or anything like that. So it was a really neat experience. And this big buck profile that Gordon did this is one of the biggest deer that has ever been profiled. The Christopher Ramsey buck from Maine, 1983, I believe. Giant mainframe 4x4. So we're talking about a mainframe 8 that grosses over 220. I mean, ridiculously huge deer. He's got junk and stickers and all that, but he is just a hammer. And Christopher Ramsey killed him, I believe, a 16 gauge shotgun in Maine. So double barrel, yeah. Just a super cool story.
Cool story.
And a great deer. Great buck.
Yeah, it was a great big buck, like you said. It's always a feat to have a free-ranging deer that goes over 200 inches of antler, but to see this on a mainframe 4x4, and I know at one point during that episode, I remember just a key factor that stood out to me. That deer's antler stood over 23 inches tall over the top of its head.
Oh, yeah.
And when you think about that, I mean, can you imagine seeing that come through the woods, headed in your direction, and having a bow in your hand or a double barrel shotgun or any weapon in your hand going, oh, my goodness.
I tell you, you can't imagine it. And really the only people in the world, not all of them, but the vast majority of the only people who can imagine it they were in that building that day, because that's how many big, huge deer of that size were at the Whitetail Rendezvous. Right. I mean, when you start talking about a rack that truly is that big and that tall, there's not many of them ever in the history of whitetails.
That's exactly right. Well, I would argue that some of them that compete probably come from Todd's home state, Ohio. So he's been privy to a few of those competitors over the years. But that wraps the episode for us. And again, that episode name is Stan Strikes Again. And you can find it on your DVRs. We got a week behind here because Haynes and I were out in the field and working on getting magazine to press, and we didn't have time last week. So we're going back and reviewing this episode. You can get it on your DVR. You can also watch it again in 6 weeks. We'll re-air that episode on the Sportsman channel and the Outdoor channel and Sportsman channel Canada. So if you need our air times, you can go to our NAW TV landing page at the North American Whitetail website, and you can get it there, or you can go to any of those network pages and grab our multiple air times across those networks. So you guys make sure you catch it. We appreciate you watching. Now we're going to turn the page here, and we're going to flip right into bows and bow hunting and Bowtech bows. And that's why we have Todd here. Well, we've got him here for multiple reasons today, but the main reason we wanted to get him here is we wanted to talk about what's going on at Bowtech and the advancements that you guys are making and the path that you're headed down, in particular with the hunting marketplace and the great things you're doing. And tell you, we've been shooting with you since the introduction of the Revolt last year and the Revolt X. And, Haynes and I both started out the season last fall in Wyoming, and we put the Revolts to work right out of the gate, shooting a couple of velvet bucks. And we just had a great experience. And now we're super excited to see you guys come into the year of 2021 and the new announcements of flagships that you just had last week. with the brand new Solution and Solution SS. And you've already heard Haynes talk about the SS. I took the Solution to Texas last week. Super fast bow velocity wise, still very forgiving at 6 inches, only 32 inches axle to axle. The deadlock technology, which I definitely want to talk about a little bit more today. But Todd, why don't you just kind of, for the folks that aren't familiar with Bowtech that are watching here today, tell them what's Bowtech known for? What has Bowtech kind of, how did Bowtech establish its foundation in the bow marketplace?
We've always led on technology, and there's a lot of products out there, not just bows, that say they pride themselves on technology, which is good. We love technology, but technology has to serve a purpose. We talked about Ozonics. It's a great technology. It serves the absolute very clear purpose there. That's what we're the same way with bows. You can create bells and whistles on a bow. You can create really good aesthetics on the bows. But in the end, a good looking bow doesn't kill a deer for you. It's the direct benefits. It's the features on the bow that create a direct benefit for archers to be able to go be a more successful archer and more successful hunter as well, or just an archer in general. To, like you said, you're a target archer. We go over and you were, I don't know if you still do. I know back in the day you were, when we first met you were, but it's the same thing. We take those technologies in all of our products. Either you're more successful competitive archer, but our biggest market is the bow hunter, as you said, and the Eastern bow hunter specifically is the largest group of bow hunters out there, and you guys are aware of that well. But to your point, like deadlock is a technology we introduced on our first Reckoning crossover bow 2 years ago. Longer axle to axle, so it's kind of a crossover target / hunting bow for somebody who wants a little longer in that 35 range. People absolutely loved it, and we crossed. At that point, everybody wanted it in a true hunting platform.
Right.
So as you mentioned, we came out with the Revolt and the Revolt X last year as the first bows to debut the deadlock technology. Deadlock technology takes the tunability of a bow to the next level. And I say tunability of a bow, people, the response we get is, well, I can tune my rest and do the same thing. The key word, what they just said, is I can tune my rest and get the same thing. They're not tuning your bow, you're tuning your rest.
Right.
With the deadlock technology, it gives you the ability to set your bow up, set that arrow rest, set it on center, set it on level nock height. Then at that point, you're tuning your bow to any arrow you want to use, any broadhead you want to use, any specific, and even to you personally. Haynes, you hold a bow differently than I do, and Layden, I hold one differently than you do. So you might induce a little more torque to it. Deadlock technology, you have the ability to fine tune that cam placement left and right, and put that string directly behind the arrow. We can get real super technical on it, but that just fine tunability, so you get that perfect arrow flight downrange. You're not band-aiding, you're not moving a rest to band-aid poor bow performance. You're optimizing the bow performance to you and your gear.
Right.
That's where the direct benefit, it just makes you a better archer, so you have the confidence and accuracy. Another thing the deadlock brings that is locked in accuracy. So you have the ability to unlock the deadlock blocks, adjust that left and right, and lock it back down, and it's not going to move. You don't have to worry about string cable stretching or yoke stretching, your cam shifting, your cam lane changing. You lock it down and you have confidence it's not going to go out of tune. Now, with like any bow, we always recommend you go in for your yearly checkup after seasons and everything else, but it's not going to let you down in the field. You're not going to get that movement in the cams. And then we took that, and so we took that next level of tunability in the Revolt and the Revolt X as our first platform. Over the year, we had all the feedback from consumers that they wanted. I'm going to put it out there. We had the Realm SR6 bow that was an industry-leading bow, award-winning bow for us.
Yep.
One of the most popular bows ever. The performance, the smooth draw on it, but everybody started to see the benefits of deadlock technology, but they wanted it on the Realm SR6 platform. It's where the solution comes into play. I shouldn't say platform, but the performance of this Realm SR6. The solution gives you that performance coupled with the smooth draw. As you know, speed's great,
Yeah.
but if it draws and shoots poorly, it's not fun to shoot. It's harder to draw on a deer. It doesn't give you the benefit, and you're likely to be less successful. The solution is really, we say, for lack of a better term, the ultimate archery experience. You have the speed, you have the performance, coupled with the smoothest speed bow draw in the industry.
Yep.
No, and that was just based on feedback from consumers. They asked for it, we had to produce it at that point.
And you did. And I want to stop there for a second, and I want to talk about the solution a little bit and kind of break it back down into what benefits the whitetail, the bow hunter and the whitetail hunter. And you're spot on with the tunability and locking it in. But I think the key messaging there is that, as hunters, it's vitally important whether we're shooting, a mechanical broadhead or a fixed broadhead.
Right.
Less important with a mechanical broadhead just due to the aerodynamics of what's going downrange. But it's vitally important that you have a well-tuned bow. We fight elements all day long in the field, whether it's wind, whether it's obstruction, whether it's buck fever, whether it, there's all these things that come into play as we're out in the field in September, October, November, December. And, I would argue that there's probably more of them the later it gets into the season, because you start, employing things like heavier clothes and
heavy coats, cold. Yes.
Yes. Yep. And just cold muscles and all these things that come into play. But I want to really key in for our viewers and our audience members here on the fact that, you have the ability to tune this bow specifically to you. And you have a system that is built with a foundation of as little margin of error as possible to come. Because like you said, there are elements that, when I used to go buy a bow at the bow shop, before I got all geeky about it, I would go in and I would rely on that person behind the counter to say, yep, this one fits you. Yep, I set it up for you. I had no idea what that arrow did when it left the bow. I had no idea why people tune stuff. I'd watch him put the rest on. He'd say, oh yeah, I need to bring it, 13/16 off the inside of the riser or whatever the measurement was for center shot. And he never took the time to explain to me, single cam versus binary cam versus cam and a half and all the influences. And what you get is with any mechanical machine, for lack of a better term, and I'm referring to a bow, you're going to have influences in the ways that are a result of the way that thing generates power. And I think that is where, as I started to dive into Bowtech and better understand how you guys use technology to build this machine, you're thinking a lot about symmetry and making sure that you're getting equal influence from a lot of different directions. So one, we have the foundation of a binary cam.
Yep.
Which means that your cables and your cables are slayed together. Each of those cams are slayed together. So you don't have the ability.
Two cams acting as one.
Acting as one, right? So you don't have the ability for a cam up here to turn 3/4 of the way or maybe earlier or any of these other things. Basically, when one of those cams goes back, the other cam goes back at an equal distance and an equal amount of movement. And then you get into I guess from there, you get into center shot itself and the center shot that Bowtech builds into a bow. And I would say talk a little bit about that. Talk about that balance of up and down and where your balance point is in regards to the grip on the riser.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had actually mentioned center shot specifically too, and that's a question we get a lot is, what's the center shot on X deadlock bow?
Right.
We don't give a number. It's square to the riser.
Right.
Then at that point you tune it to you. So for me, it might be 13/16. For you, it might be 7/8. You can actually set up either, and that's for us. It's always square to the bow. Now, you were talking about kind of the optimal position vertically in a bow. I mean, with any bow, the center point is pivot point of the grip, so where the V of your hand is. But so your burger hole is traditionally over the center of that. But with the binary cam system, it doesn't matter. You can actually draw the bow in the center of the string. You can draw the bow at the top of the string. Uncomfortable to do it that way, but it still pays out and takes up string the same. So they're equalizing. So that gives you the next level of forgiveness. And as a bow hunter, that's the biggest thing. And you were talking about margin of error. So you have the deadlock tunability, the fine tunability to each individual person, plus the binary cam system for the next level of forgiveness there. So now you have the ultimate cam system in there to make you more successful and be confident in your success. So then you can just worry about, okay, I got to overcome buck fever. I just got to make that, make the shot placement. And you have that greater margin of error at that point.
Yep. Well, I bring that, and I wanted to call that out because it's important I think it's important for us to understand as bow hunters, and we're talking to whitetail hunters here today specifically, but maybe you're an elk hunter, a mule deer hunter, or an antelope hunter, or a turkey hunter, who knows? But the reality of that situation, that foundation you've built with the binary cam system, and now the deadlock system that allows you to manipulate that string on that binary cam system and lock it in, is that all of that puts influence on an arrow, your projectile. And I'm going to come right back to those broadheads we were talking about earlier, and the planing that takes place with that projectile. If you don't have that center of performance output behind your arrow, if it's not precisely right square on that arrow, so that arrow leaves on a direct plane, and there's more physics there with spine and all that fun stuff that take place, but we're not going to get that deep. But if you don't have a center connection point where you're driving that energy, that arrow automatically has the ability to take on influence that would affect its downrange flight and accuracy. So that is where this Bowtech system, as a bow hunter, to your point, Todd, you're taking that opportunity for bad influence out of the equation. So you
hit on a key statement there to energy, because anytime a bow, without getting too in the weeds, anytime a bow tries to correct an arrow excessively, you're losing energy to do so versus putting that energy into the arrow, which is very important. You need that energy for large game. So.
Yep. Yeah, you get one of those big old bucks like Haynes tends to shoot every fall that has a bunch of muscle to him, and maybe you get into his shoulder or something. You've got to be able to drive that arrow through him, and if you're sacrificing that energy to correct arrow flight, it's not good for you, and it's not
like I mentioned early on, your bow is not optimized at that point. You're just compensating with arrow rests and things like that. So
yep.
Well, I was gonna say I'm just an English major. I didn't get an engineering degree, but listening to you guys talk is super interesting, and just hearing the different components of that bow described makes sense to me as a guy who has now shot it, just to feel that synergy and feel how smooth it is, and to really understand how those cams are working in unison and how the bow is tunable. It's really pretty crazy, because I've never seen another bow work that way. So my hat's off. It's a pretty awesome system. And as a deer hunter, my initial remarks would be, it seems like a very lightweight, well-balanced bow that is smooth to draw back. It comes to anchor very easily. And one of my favorite things about these bows is how easy they are on the hold back at full draw. When I anchor, it is just so comfortable, and I feel like I can hold the bow longer than any bow I've ever drawn. And as a whitetail guy, that could save your life in so many different situations. If you've got a big buck that's, has hung up, or he's not coming in, or he's checking the wind, or he's looking at a doe, or he stopped to eat, or he stopped behind a branch. I mean, there's 1,000 things that can happen that literally will prevent you from killing that deer if you can't hold back, if you can't hold your bow at full draw. And so
you're shooting the Solution SS, which that bow was specifically designed for what you just said. So you have your whitetail hunter, and Layden, you talked about when we were discussing the episode earlier, cold weather, heavy coats, late season. That SS is a dream for a hunter looking at that scenario. Not just that, I'm a Western hunter. I'm shooting the SS. I just like the draw. I'm quite a bit older than you guys, so I don't necessarily want to draw as much energy. But I do personally. It generates a lot of speed. But the SS is the perfect bow for the whitetail hunter, because you have that. Layden, you're talking about the 30 yards and in.
Yeah.
But you might have that colder or thicker coat on, colder weather, and you want just the best drawing bow, the best shooting bow, the smoothest entire package. And that's where the SS comes in. Like you said, Haynes, you can sit there and hold that bow all day long. And that's why what SS means, super smooth. And we say before, during, and after the shot, because you can sit there and hold day long, and it's still a 332 feet per second bow.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to be said about being able to draw that or having that smooth draw cycle. And
Right.
and Haynes, you know, him and I kid each other back and forth. And Stan tends to get in on this kidding as well at times. But we like to say that Haynes is the most laser focused deer hunter out there in the tree stand in the fall. Definitely on our team, but probably in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
But he is, and he's doing that out of intention. He's had success with hunting big whitetails and harvesting big whitetails because of the fact that he minimizes every aspect of his movement. And I can tell you that if you've got, and this speaks to the solution as well that we were talking about for that guy that's looking for that performance bow, but needs, you know, the speed without the kick, as you guys say. So he has a nice smooth draw cycle. The SS more so because it's optimized for this, but being able to easily draw that bow back in the right form, or maybe even an awkward situation where you're pinned up against the V of a big old white oak or something. You know, if you've got to come up and draw it so hard to get over the, you know, the peak of the draw cycle or bounce into the back wall because you're going through the valley after you've come off of a harsh peak in the draw cycle, man, that can ruin a hunt as well. And you've got to have that ability to be sleek,
Yep.
To get that bow back as quiet and as unnoticeable as possible, because these big mature bucks, they're on, not only are they on pins and needles, but they're so sharp and so smart and well-educated that they'll pick you out of a tree faster than anything if you've got a big movement that's being caused by, you know, a real aggressive draw cycle. That's all there is to it. So to hear that you guys are designing bows like the Solution SS that is addressing exactly that fact for, you know, the whitetail hunter, the elk hunter, the mule deer hunter, the turkey hunter, man, it says a lot about your attention to detail and the ability to listen to the marketplace and build products that they're asking for.
But it goes to exactly what we're all talking about in you know, during this episode, is being in the field.
Yeah.
That we simply put, we designed Deadlock to be the simplest, quickest tuning cam system out there for more time in the field. And it's not just, you know, I challenge everybody listening to go in and ask your local Bowtech dealer if it's the quickest and simplest tuning bow out there, and they're going to agree with you. Which it makes customers happier, because we all can get out in the field and do what we love. We can hunt and not worry about going back and retuning our bows.
Yep. And I'll attest to that. I set up all my own bows. I like to, like I said, I'm a little bit of a geek about it. And I grew up over the last few years and actually in majority of my career, once introduced working the overdrive binary cams. So dual yoke systems to adjust that cam lean.
Yep.
And so to see you take what I thought was the pinnacle of tuning technology in that overdrive binary with the dual yoke system, which relatively speaking was pretty easy to tune in regards to getting access. Yeah, until Deadlock. Yep. And I told you what, 3 weeks ago when you sent these bows out to Haynes and I to try and to help with the launch on, I said, man, it just blows my mind. I got everything set up.
This was sick.
I said it's sick. I said it was a ridiculous time saver, because I literally got center shot, got my arrow straight, got my sight on, set my peep. I've got a bag right here over my shoulder in my closet. My wife doesn't know about it. Don't tell her that, but this is where I paper tune my bows in my office. And I turned around, shot 3 arrows through paper. I had the left tear. All I did was loosen the tightening screw, the lock screw, took a half turn on both cams, and then tightened the security screw, the lock screw down on both of them. And I was shooting bullet holes and 4 arrows, 3 arrows that had a left tear, and then immediately shooting bullet holes. And I literally did that in a matter of 10 seconds. And so not only for the end user, but for the dealer. If we have an archery dealer that's out there right now.
How a dealer would find that beneficial for their customers. You know, they want customers to be happy like we do too. And that is the main goal, is to get time in the field, not tuning your bow.
Yep.
I had literally the same experience when I took the new Solution SS to my local bow shop, Drop Down Archery, to see my buddy Robert Brookman, and shop was full. Tons of people, were in having their bows worked on, buying new bows. And, I had to get it set up pretty quickly. And, I didn't want to interfere with everything he had going on. And, he's worked with these Bowtechs for years. And he said, man, don't worry about that. Hand it right here. And we shot it, and boom, quick little adjustment. 15 seconds later, he's like, she is perfect. And I was like, are you kidding me? I just got here. It's unbelievable. It truly is.
It is. It is. Well, boys, we could go down this rabbit hole for another 2 hours. And I think that warrants you returning at some point, Mr. Snader, if you wouldn't mind. And because I think it would be fun to sit down and talk with, our bow hunting audience and followers and friends about specific elements, talking about the binary cam system or maybe talking about deadlock and how, you went through that design process, or your riser design, which is another thing we didn't even touch on today. And the development of center pivot and how that's worked for you guys over the years. So we'd like to have you back at some point if you don't mind.
Yeah, we'll get this COVID out of the way. We'll do this in person somewhere, maybe around a camp doing some turkey hunting or something like that.
Hey, that would be great. And I know Haynes and I have already talked about if you guys will allow us country bumpkins into the factory out there in Oregon, coming out and spending some time. I think it'd be fun to show our viewers and our audience members the level of quality control that goes into Bowtech production, and letting them see that, man, it's people just like them that are sitting there building strings, assembling cams, assembling the risers, going through the decoration process. That was one of the most fascinating things to see for me when I started working for Bowtech years ago, was to go in that factory and see, hey, there's another 25-year-old kid right there building this string for every one of us that's getting this bow. I think it's pretty darn cool. So we'd love to do that if you'd let us in.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, if you haven't checked out the new Bowtech Solution or the new Bowtech Solution SS, take the time to go into your local dealer. Take the time to shoot both of them. I know, Todd, you talked about it, but one of the things that you're challenging everybody out there to do is just to go in and shoot them comparatively. Try them out. Give them a whirl. So it can't hurt anything. We all like to shoot bows. And this is a good time of year. Make your appointments. I know there's a lot of dealers that are open back up, and they're either doing by appointment opportunities, or they've got special hours, just like Haynes experienced. And go in there and spend some time. Season's over probably for most of you, and go check them out. They're well worth it. If you need a little more information, go to bowtecharchery.com, go to their social pages, and, ask us questions. Comment right here below. Haynes and I will answer. If we can't figure it out or answer it for you, we'll go bug Todd and get you. What would be fun is to have you and the dog. Is the dog still working at Bowtech?
Dog is still here. Here. Yeah, we're about ready to spin up Tech Talk with Dog again. We're getting we have to do the COVID edition, the social distancing, but he's still going strong.
All right. Well, make sure you let us know when you start doing that, and we'll share those across our social feeds as well. Dog's an amazing guy, and he's fun to sit and listen and share knowledge with. So, well, Haynes, appreciate it, buddy. It was fun to do it again. Todd, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us. Tell all the folks out there in Eugene that we said hello and a big thank you. And like I said, big announcement coming next week. We're looking forward to sharing that with our audience and your audience. And folks, make sure you stay tuned on that one. Haynes, any parting words?
Thank you so much, Layden, Todd. Great talking to you. You guys take care, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, Todd, any parting words?
Oh, no, man. I just appreciate being part of the one of the inaugural episodes for you guys. This is a great time.
All right, man. Well, thank you. Well, folks, go check us out. Sportsman's Channel, Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel Canada. Make sure that you're staying in tune with our Behind the Hunt video series here on our social feeds, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being an audience member of North American Whitetail and North American Whitetail TV. Take care.